The silent approach captain, Sarah Chen, stared at the massive screen in Earth's Defense Command Center. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she couldn't look away from what the deep space sensors were showing her. 12 massive shapes were moving through the dark between Jupiter and Mars. They were heading straight for Earth. "How long until they reach us?" she asked Lieutenant Morrison, who was frantically typing at his station. "At their current speed." 18 hours, Captain. Sarah's heart sank. 18 hours to prepare for humanity's first contact with alien life. And these visitors didn't look friendly. The ships were enormous, each one the size of a city. Their dark metal hulls absorbed light like hungry shadows. No communication signals, no response to Earth's desperate attempts to talk. "Have they answered any of our messages?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Nothing, ma'am. Complete radio silence." Sarah walked to the window overlooking the Nevada desert. Above them, she could see the stars. The same stars humans had dreamed of reaching for thousands of years. Now something was coming from those stars, and it might be coming to destroy them. "Get me President Martinez on secure line," she ordered, "and wake up every military commander on the planet. Tell them this is not a drill." The next few hours passed like a nightmare. World leaders held emergency meetings. Military bases around the globe went to high alert. Families hugged their children tighter. The news spread like wildfire. "We are not alone, and we might not survive the meeting." But Sarah Chen had a secret. Hidden in underground bunkers across Earth were weapons that most people had never heard of. Weapons that could fire metal slugs at incredible speeds using magnetic forces. Railguns, humanity's ace in the hole. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Morrison called out. "The alien ships are slowing down. They're taking positions around Earth." Sarah looked at the screen again. The 12 ships had spread out in a perfect circle around the planet. They hung there in space like dark angels of death, waiting. "Distance?" she asked. "About 50,000 miles out, just beyond our moon's orbit." Perfect range for the railguns, Sarah thought. But she kept that to herself. The aliens didn't know about humanity's secret weapons. They thought they were dealing with a primitive species that barely had rockets. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Suddenly, every screen in the command center lit up with the same image. A towering alien figure with 4 arms, dark purple skin and eyes like burning coals. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Humans of Earth," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Commander Zeth of the Korthak Empire. Your species has been chosen for harvest. Your planet contains resources we require. You have 1 hour to surrender completely, or we will take what we need by force." The screen went black. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Harvest. The word sent chills down her spine. These aliens didn't want to trade or make friends. They wanted to strip Earth bare and probably kill every human in the process. 1 hour, she whispered. Then louder, "Morrison, get me General Rodriguez at Rail Command. Tell him it's time to show our visitors what humanity is really capable of." The lieutenant's eyes widened. He'd heard rumors about Rail Command, but like most people, he thought they were just stories. Secret weapons were the stuff of movies, not real life. "Ma'am, are you sure about this?" he asked. Sarah looked at the blank screen where the alien commander had delivered Earth's death sentence. Then she looked at the tactical display showing the 12 massive ships surrounding their planet like vultures. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," she said. "Send the message, and tell the general that humanity is about to make one hell of a first impression." The clock on the wall showed 11:42 p.m. In exactly 1 hour, Commander Zeth would expect humanity's surrender. Instead, he was going to get the surprise of his very long alien life. Sarah Chen smiled for the first time in hours. The Korthak Empire thought they were dealing with helpless primitives. They were about to discover that Earth's children had grown up to be wolves in sheep's clothing. The countdown had begun. The hidden arsenal deep beneath the frozen wasteland of Antarctica. General Carlos Rodriguez walked through corridors that officially didn't exist. The facility, codenamed Thor's Hammer, was one of 12 identical bases hidden around the world. Each one contained humanity's most closely guarded secret, electromagnetic railguns capable of firing projectiles at 15% the speed of light. "Status report," Rodriguez barked as he entered the main control room. The chamber was massive, filled with screens and control stations. Through reinforced windows he could see the railgun itself, a beast of metal and magnets stretching nearly a mile underground. All systems green. "General," replied Dr. Lisa Park, the facility's chief scientist. "We received Captain Chen's authorization code 10 minutes ago. Thor's hammer is ready to fire." Rodriguez nodded grimly. For 20 years he'd hoped this day would never come. The railgun project had started as pure research, scientists trying to understand electromagnetic propulsion. But as the technology improved, the military possibilities became impossible to ignore. "How long to charge the capacitors?" he asked. 35 minutes for full power," Dr. Park replied. "But General, are we really going to fire on alien ships? This could start a war we can't win." Rodriguez looked at the tactical display showing the alien fleet. Each of those ships could probably destroy entire cities, but they were positioned exactly where Earth's hidden railguns could hit them. "Dr. Park," he said quietly, "the war already started the moment they said harvest. We're just going to finish it." Meanwhile, in orbit around Earth, Commander Zeth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devourer. The bridge was a cathedral of dark metal and pulsing lights. Through the massive windows, he could see the blue-green planet below. Spinning peacefully in the void, report from the scanning teams, ordered. Zeth. His forearms moved gracefully as he manipulated holographic displays. "The humans have primitive chemical rockets," reported his second-in-command. "Captain Vex, a few space stations, some satellites, nothing that could threaten us." Zeth's lipless mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "As expected, their technology is barely beyond stone tools. This will be over quickly." But Zeth had made a critical error. The Korthak Empire had conquered dozens of worlds, always following the same pattern. Arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, then strip the planet bare. It had worked every time because most species developed space travel and weapons at the same rate. Humanity was different. Humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing each other with increasingly sophisticated weapons. They developed railgun technology decades before they built their first permanent space station. The aliens were scanning for nuclear missiles and laser weapons. They weren't looking for magnetic signatures buried deep underground. Back in the Antarctic base, the massive capacitors were charging with a sound like distant thunder. The railgun itself was a marvel of engineering. Electromagnetic coils arranged in perfect sequence, designed to accelerate a tungsten projectile to unimaginable speeds. 20 minutes to full charge, Dr. Park announced. "General, I'm reading similar magnetic signatures from the other 11 bases. They're all preparing to fire." Rodriguez felt a grim satisfaction. Project Thor's hammer hadn't been his idea originally. That credit belonged to a brilliant physicist named Dr. Sarah Chen, Captain Chen's mother. She'd died in a lab accident 15 years ago, never knowing that her theoretical work would one day save the human race. "All stations, this is Thor Command." Rodriguez spoke into his headset. "Prepare for synchronized firing sequence. Target assignments are locked in. We get one shot at this, people. Make it count." Above them, Commander Zeth was growing impatient. The hour was almost up, and the humans hadn't responded to his ultimatum. Not that it mattered. Surrender or resistance, the outcome would be the same. The Korthak Empire would take what it wanted. "Captain Vex," Zeth commanded, "prepare the harvest beams. We'll start with their largest population centers. The rest will surrender quickly enough once they see what happens to the defiant ones." "Yes, Commander," Vex replied. "Charging harvest beams now." On Earth, Captain Chen watched the countdown clock. 58 minutes had passed since the alien ultimatum. In 2 minutes, Commander Zeth would expect humanity's answer. He was going to get one. "All railgun facilities report ready," Lieutenant Morrison announced. "They're waiting for your signal, Captain." Sarah Chen thought about her mother, about the theory that had led to humanity's secret weapons. She thought about her daughter sleeping peacefully in Colorado, unaware that alien monsters wanted to destroy her world. "Send this message to the Korthak fleet," she ordered. "Commander Zeth, here is humanity's answer to your ultimatum." She paused, knowing that her next words would change everything. Fire. Thunder from Earth. The word fire had barely left Captain Chen's lips when 12 railguns fired simultaneously from hidden bases around the globe. The electromagnetic pulse was so powerful that every electronic device within 50 miles of each facility temporarily flickered. In the deep underground chambers, tungsten projectiles, each one the size of a telephone pole and weighing 2 tons, were accelerated to 45,000 miles per second. The projectiles left Earth's atmosphere in 0.3 seconds. They crossed the distance to the alien fleet in under 4 seconds. Commander Zeth and his crew had no time to react, no time to raise shields, no time to even understand what was happening. On the bridge of the Devourer, Zeth was studying holographic displays of Earth's major cities when reality exploded around him. The tungsten projectile struck his ship dead center, punching through the hull like it was made of paper. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, but concentrated into a space the size of a baseball. The Devourer, a ship that had conquered 20 worlds, split in half in a brilliant flash of vaporized metal and escaping atmosphere. 11 more flashes lit up space, as the remaining Korthik ships met the same fate. Each railgun projectile found its target with surgical precision, guided by Earth's most advanced tracking computers. The aliens' advanced shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and deflect missiles, were useless against simple chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds. In the Antarctic Command Center, General Rodriguez watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. 12 red dots representing the alien ships flickered and disappeared one by one. All targets neutralized, Dr. Park reported, her voice filled with amazement. Direct hits on all 12 ships. The fleet is gone. Confirm that, Rodriguez ordered. I want every telescope on the planet looking up there. Make sure nothing survived. Meanwhile, Captain Chen was receiving similar reports from observation posts around the world. The alien fleet, humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial life, had been completely destroyed in less than 10 seconds. But as the initial shock wore off, a terrible realization began to dawn on everyone in the command center. They had just committed genocide against beings they'd never tried to understand. 12 massive ships, probably carrying thousands of aliens, had been wiped out without warning. "Captain," Lieutenant Morrison said quietly, "what have we done?" Sarah Chen stared at the now empty tactical display. The same question was haunting her. The aliens had threatened to harvest Earth, but what if there had been another way? What if they could have negotiated? What if some of those aliens had been innocent, just following orders like human soldiers did? Then she remembered Commander Zeth's words. Your species has been chosen for harvest, not trade. Not negotiation, harvest, like humans were nothing more than crops to be gathered. We survived, she said finally. That's what we did, Lieutenant. We survived, but their celebration was premature. In the wreckage of the Devourer, something was still functioning. A small, heavily armored communication pod had survived the ship's destruction. Inside, a dying Korthak warrior named Captain Vex was sending a final message across the galaxy. This is Captain Vex of the destroyed First Fleet. He gasped into the transmitter. The human species is not what we thought. They have kinetic weapons, incredible velocity. The entire fleet is lost. Vex coughed up purple blood as his life support systems failed. But he managed one final warning. Do not underestimate them. Do not send another small fleet. If you want this world, send everything. The message traveled through space at light speed, heading toward the core worlds of the Korthak Empire. It would take months to arrive, but when it did, it would change everything. Back on Earth, the world was celebrating. News of humanity's victory spread faster than wildfire. People danced in the streets. World leaders held press conferences talking about humanity's strength and ingenuity. The railgun facilities were revealed to the public, and their creators became overnight heroes. But in the quiet of his Antarctic command bunker, General Rodriguez wasn't celebrating. He was studying intelligence reports about the Korthak Empire, information gathered from the aliens' own databases before their ships were destroyed. What he found made his blood run cold. The Korthak Empire controlled over 200 worlds. They had harvested entire civilizations. Their military forces numbered in the millions of ships. And according to their own records, the 12 ships that had come to Earth were just a scouting force. the smallest possible military unit in their vast armada. "Dr. Park," Rodriguez called out, "how quickly can we build more railguns?" "With the current industrial capacity, maybe 12 more facilities in 5 years," she replied. "Why?" Rodriguez showed her the alien intelligence data. Her face went pale as she read the numbers. "Oh my God," she whispered. "How many ships do they have?" "According to this, the Korthak Empire can field over 50,000 warships," Rodriguez said grimly. "And we just killed one of their fleets." The celebration around the world continued, but in the secret command centers, humanity's leaders were beginning to understand the terrible truth. They had won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. And when the Korthak Empire learned what had happened to their first fleet, they would come back with everything they had. The clock was ticking again, but this time humanity had maybe a year before the real invasion began. A year to prepare for a war against an empire that had never lost a single battle. The railguns had saved Earth once. But would they be enough when thousands of alien ships darkened the sky? The price of victory. 6 months after the destruction of the first fleet, the world had changed dramatically. The celebration had faded, replaced by the largest military buildup in human history. Every nation on Earth was working together on a single project, building enough railguns to fight an empire. Captain Sarah Chen, now promoted to Admiral, stood in the new Global Defense Command Center in Geneva. The facility was 10 times larger than the old one in Nevada, with representatives from every country on Earth. Through the massive windows, she could see construction crews working day and night on the first of the new orbital railgun platforms. "Status report," she called out to the bustling command center. "Ma'am, we now have 36 ground-based railgun facilities operational," reported Colonel Morrison. He'd been promoted too. "The first orbital platform will be ready for testing in 2 weeks." Sarah nodded, but her expression remained grim. 36 railguns sounded impressive until you compared it to what was coming. According to the decoded alien intelligence, the Korthak Empire was preparing a conquest fleet of over 5,000 ships. Even if every shot was perfect, humanity would be overwhelmed. "What about the new ammunition?" she asked Dr. Park, who was now Earth's chief weapons designer. "The uranium core projectiles are ready," Dr. Park replied. "They'll hit harder than the tungsten slugs we used on the first fleet. But Admiral, even with perfect accuracy, the math doesn't look good." Sarah knew the math. She'd run the calculations herself dozens of times, hoping to find a different answer. Humanity could maybe destroy 200 ships before being overrun. Against 5,000 it wouldn't be enough. But humans had one advantage the Korthak Empire didn't know about: creativity born from desperation. "Dr. Park, what's the status on Project Shotgun?" Sarah asked. Dr. Park's eyes lit up. "The multi-projectile system is ready for testing. Instead of one large slug, each railgun will fire 20 smaller ones in a spread pattern. It should be effective against clustered formations." "And Project Ricochet?" "Still theoretical but promising. We're working on projectiles that can bounce off one target and hit another using magnetic guidance systems." These were the kinds of innovations that only desperate humans would think of. The Korthak Empire fought with overwhelming force and superior technology. Humans fought with cunning, adaptation, and the willingness to try impossible things. Meanwhile, in a secret facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, humanity's most brilliant minds were working on something even more ambitious: Project Longshot. If it worked, it would change the nature of warfare itself. Dr. James Wright, formerly of NASA, was explaining the concept to a room full of military leaders. "Gentlemen, ladies, what if we don't wait for them to come to us?" he said, pointing to a holographic display. "Our intelligence shows the Korthak conquest fleet is gathering at a staging area 12 light-years away. They'll spend months there preparing for the invasion." "What are you suggesting, Doctor?" asked General Rodriguez. "We build the biggest railgun in human history. Not to fire at ships, to fire at their staging area. A projectile launched at near light speed could reach them before they finish preparations." The room fell silent. The idea was audacious beyond belief. A railgun powerful enough to launch projectiles across interstellar space would require the energy output of a small nation. "How big would this weapon need to be?" Sarah asked. The accelerator would need to be at least 500 miles long, Dr. Wright replied. We'd have to build it in space using materials from asteroid mining. It would take everything humanity has. And the projectile, a specially designed warhead that would fragment just before impact, creating a cloud of debris moving at 30% light speed. It would be like firing a shotgun blast across 12 light-years of space. The military leaders looked at each other. The project was insane, impossible, and completely contrary to every principle of defensive warfare. How long would it take to build? Sarah asked. 8 months, working around the clock with every resource on Earth. Sarah felt the weight of command pressing down on her. Humanity could spend the next year building more railguns to defend Earth, knowing they would probably lose anyway. Or they could gamble everything on one impossible shot at the enemy's home base. Dr. Wright, she said finally, you're talking about the largest construction project in human history. We'd have to strip mine half the asteroid belt. Every space-capable nation would have to contribute everything they have. Yes, ma'am. But if it works, we end the war before it really begins. And if it doesn't work, then humanity goes down fighting instead of cowering behind our walls. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of Earth's defenders. These people had families, hopes, dreams. Some of them would die building this impossible weapon. More would die if it failed, but in their eyes, she saw something that the Korthak Empire had never encountered in their centuries of conquest: the absolute refusal to give up. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah said, we're going to build the biggest gun in the galaxy, and we're going to shoot first. The room erupted in nervous energy as people began planning humanity's most desperate gamble. Outside, construction crews were already expanding the shipyards, preparing to build something that had never been attempted before. Far across the galaxy, Captain Vex's final message had finally reached the Korthak homeworld. The Empire's War Council was meeting to discuss the destruction of the First Fleet. In their arrogance, they assumed it was just a lucky shot from a primitive species. They were preparing to send 5,000 ships to finish what the First Fleet had started. But they had no idea that their primitive prey was preparing the largest surprise in military history. The race was on. Could humanity build their impossible weapon before the conquest fleet arrived? And even if they succeeded, would one shot across the galaxy be enough to save Earth? The next 8 months would determine whether humanity survived as a free species, or joined the long list of civilizations harvested by the Korthak Empire. Project Longshot had begun. The final gambit 8 months later, Admiral Sarah Chen floated in the command module of humanity's greatest achievement and possibly its last hope. The Longshot railgun stretched across 500 miles of space, a massive construction of steel, magnets, and pure human determination. Around her, the command crew worked frantically at their stations as final preparations were completed. Asteroid mining teams report the projectile is loaded and ready, reported Colonel Morrison from his station. All 847 fragments are properly positioned within the carrier. Sarah looked out the window at the projectile, a specially designed warhead containing nearly 1,000 pieces of ultra-dense metal, each one shaped to maximize damage when it hit. When it reached the Korthak staging area, it would fragment and create a cloud of destruction moving at 1/3 the speed of light. Dr. Wright, final systems check, Sarah ordered. All magnetic coils are charged and ready, the scientist replied. Energy absorption from the solar array is at maximum. We have enough power for one shot. 8 months of construction, the resources of an entire planet, and the hopes of 8 billion people, all riding on one shot fired across 12 light-years of empty space. Long-range sensors. What's the status of the Korthak fleet? Sarah asked. Lieutenant Yang checked her displays. Ma'am, our deep space telescopes show they're still gathering at the staging area. Current count is 4,847 ships and growing. They appear to be in final preparation for departure. Sarah felt her heart racing. The timing was perfect, almost too perfect. The Korthak Empire had spent months assembling their conquest fleet, completely unaware that humanity was preparing to fire the largest weapon in galactic history at them. But there was a problem. The projectile would take nearly a year to cross the distance to the staging area. If the aliens left before it arrived, the shot would hit empty space and humanity would face the full fury of an angry empire with no defenses left. Communications, any word from Earth? Sarah asked. Admiral, ground control reports that the Korthak fleet appears to be preparing for departure. Our intelligence analysts estimate they'll leave the staging area within the next 72 hours. Sarah closed her eyes. After all this work, after sacrificing everything, they were going to be too late. The aliens would leave for Earth before humanity's desperate gamble could reach them. Unless... Dr. Wright, Sarah said suddenly, what happens if we overcharge the magnetic coils? Push them beyond safe limits? The scientist looked horrified. Admiral, the safety margins exist for a reason. If we overcharge the system, the entire railgun could tear itself apart. We'd lose everything, but the projectile would move faster. Theoretically, yes. Maybe 40% light speed instead of 33%. That would cut the travel time to about 8 months. Still too long, Sarah muttered. Then she had another idea. What if we fire multiple shots? Impossible. We only have one projectile, and the power requirements... Not multiple projectiles, Sarah interrupted. Multiple railguns. The command crew turned to stare at her. Dr. Wright's face went pale. Admiral, we only built one long-shot railgun. The others are all planetary defense weapons, but they can be modified, can't they? The orbital platforms, the ones we just finished building. If we stripped them down, removed the defensive systems, could we convert them into smaller versions of long-shot? Dr. Wright was quiet for a long moment, running calculations in his head. It might be possible. We'd have to completely rebuild 12 orbital platforms in about 48 hours. Remove all their defensive capabilities. They'd be one-shot weapons after that. How many projectiles could we fire? Maybe 13 total, including this one. But Admiral, if we strip our orbital defenses, Earth will be completely vulnerable when the surviving Korthak ships arrive. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the alien fleet. Nearly 5,000 ships, each one capable of destroying entire cities. Even 13 perfect shots might not be enough, but it was humanity's only chance. Send the order, she commanded. All orbital platforms are to be converted to long-range railguns within 48 hours. Every available ship and crew is to assist with the modifications. Admiral, Colonel Morrison said quietly, if this doesn't work, we'll have no defenses left at all. Colonel, if this doesn't work, it won't matter what defenses we have left. The next 2 days were a frenzy of activity unlike anything in human history. Ships that had been built for defense were torn apart and rebuilt as weapons of desperation. Crews worked without sleep, knowing that every hour of delay might mean the difference between salvation and extinction. On Earth, people watched the news in terrified silence. Their governments had gambled everything on a weapon most of them couldn't understand, aimed at an enemy they couldn't see, across distances they couldn't imagine. In the Korthak staging area, Commander Thex was making final preparations for departure. The destruction of the First Fleet had been a humiliation that demanded overwhelming response. This time there would be no mercy, no chance for the humans to use whatever trick had destroyed the previous ships. All ships report ready for hyperspace jump, his aide announced. Excellent, Thex replied. Begin the final countdown. In 3 hours we depart for Earth. But the commander had made a crucial error. The Korthak Empire's intelligence was based on their experience with other conquered worlds. They expected humans to cower behind their defenses, waiting for the inevitable. They never imagined that a primitive species would attempt to strike first across interstellar distances. Back in the long-shot command module, Admiral Chen received the final reports from the converted orbital platforms. All 13 railguns report ready to fire, Colonel Morrison announced. We have a narrow window. The Korthak fleet is still clustered at the staging area, but they're showing signs of imminent departure. Sarah looked at the tactical display one last time. 13 shots, 13 chances to save humanity. If even one Korthak ship survived and made it to Earth, billions would die. All stations, this is Admiral Chen, she broadcast to the 13 railgun positions. Fire when ready. May God help us all. Across the solar system, 13 railguns fired simultaneously. The combined electromagnetic pulse was visible from Earth as a flash of light in the sky. 13 projectiles, each carrying hundreds of fragments, raced across the galaxy at nearly half the speed of light. The race was on. Would humanity's desperate gambit reach the Korthak fleet before they departed for Earth? And even if it did, would it be enough to stop an empire that had never known defeat? In 8 months, Sarah Chen would have her answer. Until then, all humanity could do was wait, hope, and pray that their impossible weapon would find its target across the vast darkness of space. The fate of Earth was now literally flying through the void, carried by physics, desperation, and the refusal of the human species to go quietly into the night. The final countdown had begun. 8 months later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Earth's rebuilt Defense Command, watching the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant colors. In her hand, she held a message that had arrived just minutes before, confirmation from deep space telescopes that the long-shot projectiles had found their target. The Korthak staging area was gone. All 4,047 ships had been destroyed in a spectacular display of human ingenuity and determination. The fragments had hit with such devastating force that they had created a small nebula where the enemy fleet once gathered. But the victory came with a price. Intercepted communications showed that other Korthak fleets existed throughout the galaxy. Humanity had won the first war, but they had also announced their presence to an empire that would never forget or forgive. Admiral, Colonel Morrison approached with a new report. Long-range sensors are picking up movement from other Korthak systems. It looks like they're mobilizing everything they have. Sarah smiled grimly. The Korthak Empire thought they were dealing with a species that would fight one defensive battle and then submit. They were about to learn that humans didn't just fight when cornered. They fought when threatened. They fought when angry, and they kept fighting until their enemies stopped moving. "Colonel," she said, "send a message to all defense contractors. Tell them we're going to need bigger railguns." As the sun rose over Earth, construction crews were already beginning work on humanity's next impossible project. The first shot had been fired in a war that would span the galaxy, and humanity intended to win. The first fleet had fallen when humanity revealed its railguns. But that was just the beginning of the story. The real war was about to begin.